Hang on, this one needs music.
Okay. Someday, when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold, I will feel a glow just thinking of you and the way you look tonight.
From Los Angeles and Nashville, get ready to go behind the scenes with Entertainment Dudes. What happens when you pair a director, a voice actor in a world, and some of the most interesting people in entertainment? You're about to find out.
This show is not sponsored by Red Bull. Don't expect to get a single penny from Red Bull.
Man, that's what the caffeine will do to you, folks. We're awake now.
And I'm ready to do this show. How about you?
We've got more with Greg Travis.
If you didn't see Greg Travis last week, then you suck. No, actually, it doesn't mean that. It just means you just missed it.
Stop this episode right now and check out last week, and then come back to this episode.
Because this episode is going to be fire.
Part deux with Greg Travis on Entertainment Dudes.
On Entertainment Dudes. Welcome, Greg Travis. Drop him in the show, Cam.
I've been working with startup companies for a little while out here in the Valley, and it's like, that's the one thing you do is you learn your pitch, you learn your 30-second elevator pitch on whatever it is, and you always have that in the back of your head.
Right.
And then whenever you need to, you can pull that out, or whatever. And that comes in handy for anything. I mean, that comes in handy in job interviews, comes in handy in pitching TV ideas, it comes in handy in interviewing people, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, I know you've done a lot of pitches. So in the time, obviously, you've been doing interviews, editing, putting together stories. I know you've also come up with a lot of your own ideas working with the different networks. So first of all, how do you come up with an idea, and how do you know, hey, this is actually a good idea? What's the thing that tells you oh, I've got it. This is a great idea. Where does that come from?
It's amazing because I'm like an idea machine. I think a lot of people are, it's you see so many things on TV these days, and it's oh my God, this would be great if you saw this documentary on whatever, and music documentaries are a good example. There's so many great music documentaries that came from an angle that you didn't expect. Mm-hmm. One example is 20 Feet from Stardom, which is looking at the lens of celebrity through the background singers and the ones that were just 20 feet from stardom their whole career.
Yeah, what an idea. Right. Yeah, a point of view you never hear.
Exactly. And that's an amazing documentary. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. But so there's so many ways to look at these days, look at any entertainment business, behind the scenes of movies. I think there's a series called The Movies That Made Us or something like that, that shows all the behind the scenes that happened on Ghostbusters and lots of major films. And they talk about how, they got to a point and they had to shut down production because they ran out of money and the film wasn't going to be made and everybody was let go, and then somebody came in at the last minute and rescued it. And it's I find all those backstories just so fascinating. So there's a lot of great ideas. And for me, it's when I have an idea, or I talk to friends all the time that are producers in LA and New York, and we're always sort of brainstorming, whenever we see something that's this is spurring an idea. The first thing I do is write it down, and then I go research and see if that's been done. Has somebody done that, and IMDb is a great source, Wikipedia. I mean, just, you can look up documentaries easily on Google, but I always try to look for okay, has that been done? And if somebody did do it, could you do it differently or, make it better? And so that's sort of a first approach is that, and then for me, it's formulating ideas. And then basically if we have a good enough idea, we'll throw a pitch deck together.
And what's a pitch deck for anyone that doesn't know? What's that?
Pitch deck for us is I would say it could be a PowerPoint. It could be, just I'll generally send mine out as PowerPoint or actually PDF documents. It's like a 5 to 10 page just overview.
Well, what has to go in it? I know I've heard
of
like it has to be a synopsis. You have to have a log line. You have to have. Are you doing like an exact format, or you just? What do you think?
Kind of
You
like a
can
treatment?
do that. The whole treatment is that's sort of getting into treatment, but it's more so just pitching the idea. And you don't really like, I won't take the time to develop a whole long treatment of episode breakdowns or arc of episodes or anything until we at least have the basic concept and we have somebody interested, you know. And the way, like within the documentary world is, you know, you can come up with a ton of great ideas, but you got to have access to footage or, you know, access to something. So that's the next phase is, you know, you can put together a deck, and there's different types of decks. You can put a deck together that would get the people who own the footage interested in working with you, you know, to put something together. And then you create a secondary deck that then would pitch it to a network. So
the first one might be the pitch to get the people interested who you're going to need in order to make the documentary possible. Once you've kind of confirmed that, now we're going to approach the network because I've got original Elvis footage that's never been used before. Now I know so-and-so might be interested in this. I've got them on board with that deck. Now let's create a new deck for XYZ organization Exactly.
A good example lately that happened is Summer of Soul. Documentary. I don't know if you saw that. I believe it's on HBO or Amazon Prime, but it won the Oscar for Best Music Documentary, and they won a Grammy for the soundtrack on it. It was Questlove but somebody came to him and they had found this old footage of a concert in Harlem that happened in the early 70s, and it was a whole concert that had Sly and the Family Stone and like Stevie Wonder and just a ton of artists. And they were doing this concert as it was like to bring Harlem together as a community. So it had social impact, you know, attached to it. So when you put it, so what they did, which was absolutely brilliant, is they took it and put it in the social context of today's world with Black Lives Matter and with all the social, you know, sort of injustice that's happening. And they used that concert as how it was then, and then how things have changed now or have, you know, and that was just an amazing approach to a music documentary. And it paid off because they won the Oscar for it. And I was actually at the Grammys. My oldest daughter, Laura, she works for the Grammys. And so I went to the Grammys, and it was kind of funny. We went to the pre-telecast. This was a couple of weeks ago in Vegas. And we're sitting at this row at the pre-telecast, and Chris Stapleton's like a couple of seats down, and he wins the Oscar, or I'm sorry, the Grammy for Best Country Album. So I'm like, I didn't even know he was sitting there. And then, you know, and all of a sudden they announced Questlove for this soundtrack, and he's sitting right in front of me, like in the seat right in front of me. Like,
that's awesome.
Recognize him, and he gets up and goes and gets his award. But that's a great way that they took some old footage, but they put it into a broader social context. Yeah. And it really made it, you know, appealing and gave it a lot more meaning, more than just a music documentary. So I think that's the sort of things we are looking at. You know, I've got a couple of partners, and we're getting some show pitches together, and we came up with one really great idea, and we started pitching it to some publicists, and we met with resistance, you know, on participation from artists or whatever. And basically we were looking into the publicity world, you know, because it hasn't really been looked into. But it's supposed to be very secret and private between the artist and the publicist. So it's hard to get anybody to talk about it, you know. So
very hard.
Right.
So we're taking a different approach. I mean, we still want to do something that sort of looks at fame and celebrity from different approaches. But, you know, sometimes you have a great idea, but, you know, it's like you can't get access to the people you need or the footage you need. And so that's kind of a, you know, it's like there's like a checklist, you know. Okay, is it a great idea? Yes. Can we do a pitch deck that'll get people interested? Yes. You know, can we access the footage and all the archival photos or whatever? Can we purchase them? Is there enough in the licensing budget to, you know, purchase, you know, photos from Getty Images or, you know, from AP? and then you sort of budget all that stuff in, and then you start throwing it out to a network. So there's a ton of research and development that goes in, to any sort of pitch long before it gets to a network.
Yeah, a lot of people think, "Oh, I have a great idea. I'll just write a letter and they'll pick up this show." And most of the time, it doesn't happen that way. It takes so much preparation. Even for somebody like Greg, who's been going for so long and has lots of contacts and relationships, they still have to be able to put everything together. A lot of times, packaging for any film or production it's not only just a story. There's also an element of how are they going to make money off of this idea, or how is it going to, how is it going to be profitable? A lot of producers will reverse engineer films based upon it needs to make this much money. If it's going to make this much money in these markets, it needs to have so and so and these actors. And they kind of reverse engineer a story based on that. So even if you just have a great idea, doesn't mean. I mean, there's like Greg said, we're factories of ideas. So how do you execute on that idea? A lot of it, I think, is just something interesting. Just that came to me while you were talking is about the importance of perspective. It's like you said, how can you? Every story that's ever been told has probably been told at some point, and there's nothing that we're doing that's necessarily like, oh, that's a new idea that no one's ever done. Sometimes it happens, but generally it's like, how can I tell this story through my perspective or through a different perspective, a different lens? How can I show what's happening in a different way? And I think that's the most interesting part. If someone's like, there's a concert in Harlem. Okay, we'll air the concert. I guess, yeah, people will watch that. That's interesting. People who like that genre, they might find that interesting. Cut together a concert, put it out there. Okay. But I don't know. There's a message. There's a story behind it about something that happened. There's a parallel we can draw between then and now. And we can make it interesting by saying, how has it changed? In what ways has it changed? Are we better? Are we worse? And it makes it a more valuable story simply by perspective, changing the perspective of how it's told.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I highly recommend watching that too, if you haven't seen it, Summer of Soul. But that's sort of I look at COVID actually gave me a chance to sit at home and watch TV a lot.
Oh, really? You had time?
Watch every behind the scenes documentary I think ever made. It seems like I saw, and it's fascinating. And we lost a good friend over COVID at the end of 2020.
I'm sorry.
Our friend Clay, who was our music producer and then senior producer at Entertainment Tonight, and he passed away. And so we did a tribute. I organized with Nancy O'Dell and Nancy Harrison and lots of people that we worked with at ET, Access Hollywood, all the people that knew Clay. And so we brought in like some publicists. We had like Olivia Newton-John sent clips. I mean, we had all types of people sending little video clips, and we put together a really nice streaming, tribute to him. And one of the publicists, who represents one of the biggest artists in the world, came on live, and she told a story of how he literally rescued the career of, I can tell you, it was Beyonce's publicist, and she was like a struggling publicist in Houston in the early 90s or sometime, or maybe late 80s. And they were like, they couldn't get any media coverage on them, and it was Destiny's Child. And so Clay, she begged him at Entertainment Tonight to put a story on. And he finally said, I'm going to give this a shot. I like their music. Yeah. And so he gave them a shot. And she told this story in tears of how they were almost ready to give up, that they, they didn't think the career was going to go anywhere. That story didn't by itself, break them, but it got them seen by a lot more people. It really sort of fueled everything, and they kept going. And now, of course, Beyonce is a massive star.
Beyonce is Beyonce now. Yeah, she doesn't even have to have a last name. She's there.
Exactly. So, but when she told that story, it was like, God, that is so powerful. And how one person, one journalist, one publicist, can change the total career journey of a celebrity, and so that's the type of stories we look for. So that gave us some ideas that I can't tell you about, but it's like we're sort of working on. But it's like,
is there anywhere you can watch that tribute, or is that something that was in house, just?
It was kind of private. I mean, it went out
Okay.
to about 2,000 publicists, people in the music industry and stuff. And
Yeah, sure.
so it's not really public. It was sort of a private service, but that gave us the idea. It's like, God, there's so many great stories of how celebrities got just to the edge of giving up. And, Garth Brooks has a great story. He came to Nashville. He tried for a few months. He couldn't get arrested, and he went back to Oklahoma and became a bouncer. And finally somebody said, come back, try it one more time, and he did. And the rest is history.
Yep. Alan Jackson was working in the mailroom at CMT.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, when my dad found him, and that was his job, and just kind of struggling.
Wow, that's wild.
And so those stories are everywhere, and they're the best stories.
I was struggling too. I was working as an editor at this Travis television company.
And we only wanted him because he was funny.
Yeah, he's funny. One of my favorite things I think we did was at Clay Walker. He did that foundation. Do you remember the name of his foundation?
It's Muscular Dystrophy or MS Society. He one of my favorite things we ever did. So we did a tribute for him because he received an award, like a kind of a lifetime achievement award for his work in MS, and we'd cut that together. Now, usually as a filmmaker or as a creative, I don't get to watch most people's reactions. You send off a project and you just never know, does it touch anyone? Does it do anything for anyone? It's just like it just in the ether, and you hope somebody sees it. And that day we had a camera that was on him. And I remember watching him watch the video, and he was just bawling because all of these people, we did all these interviews with a lot of people who'd work with him, who were saying, congratulating him and, how he touched their lives. And it just touched him so much. And that was the first time I'd ever created something that I felt like I just was so proud, like, I'm so proud to be a part of that project because it was so powerful and so impactful. And I actually got to see it. Wow. Impact someone. I'll never forget, ever forget that moment. I think that's the best part of working in this business is like when you see the payoff of something connecting with people emotionally. My good friend Jeanette Jolly and I, we were both adopted. She's amazing. Jeanette, Jeanette. She's yes. Amazing. We've always had this idea. We want to do something with adoption, and that's a very personal journey for both of us. And and so we, I'm sure you're familiar with Stephen Curtis Chapman, and he has an organization called Show Hope, and then they help get children adopted with families, and so we wound up working with him on a few pretty big presentations that we're doing, and we told some stories, and actually Jeanette went to China with them to see some of the hospitals, which was heartbreaking, so many of the kids that go unadopted, and so we put all this content together, and we made this sort of little documentary look at at one particular child and her journey, and it was at the Skimmerhorn Center in Nashville, which is like the beautiful opera house or whatever there. And we went in and they had a big fundraiser dinner and they showed this video there. And I just remember being in there and not a dry eye in the house. And the whole awesome. Place was just like, it was so powerful. It was better than anything I think I've ever done on TV. It was like
same. It's like I worked on that. I got to work on that project. I got some. I got brought in for just a small cleanup. I think it was just because for whatever reason, but it was impactful. Another one that we did was Nashville Rising. I remember when, Nashville got flooded in 2010
with Bill,
and we did a live concert, that huge concert for him. And then Wes Human and I think we were cutting everything as it was going and sending out all the clips, and it had to go to all different networks and getting to see firsthand again, so many people impacted by that live. It's just.
That was an amazing, I won an Emmy for that.
Did you really?
That was, I won an Emmy and I didn't even submit it. Another company submitted it because we did those packages that aired on
all night long. Remember we got them down at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning.
We sent them to, and I was the director, and so I got an Emmy. I didn't even know. I got notified that I had won an Emmy.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
Okay.
Hey,
awesome.
then I got to work on another Emmy-winning project. Woo.
So yeah, you can add that to yours too.
Actually,
what
that
we did
year,
was I'm sorry, Cam.
No, go ahead.
So what that was, and see, that was a labor of love. Like none of us got paid for that at all.
Yeah.
We all volunteered, and it was such a cool thing because, so many people had lost their homes, and
right.
and my mother, father-in-law, they had lost their home. They had to go in the second story and be rescued by boat in Bellevue, and it was like, so it was a huge, tragedy. And people didn't realize it around the country. And so we got footage to the Weather Channel, and it started to really, make some headway. And then we got Tim and Faith, Tim's management company reached out to me and said, well, we're going to put this concert together at the arena, and we're going to bring in Miley Cyrus and Billy Ray and Leonard Skinner and, Tim and Faith. And so they wound up bringing Sandra Bullock, because they had just finished that movie that they
Hope.
Tim and Sandra. It was a great movie. It's the football movie.
Yeah, isn't it something Hope?
Yeah,
or,
I know which one.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. But anyway, they had just done that, so they brought in her. And so what we did is, instead of like bringing in a ton of media crews, is we set up backstage as one major sort of interview area. And we brought, each participating, celebrity in there. And my friend Nancy O'Dell flew in on her own dime from Los Angeles. This is, I think, before she started hosting ET. She was still at Access Hollywood, but she came in and she wound up hosting, just interviewing people for us. And so we shot all that, and we made deals with the different entertainment outlets, to where like we would do an exclusive piece with I think Jewel, and we sent that footage to Entertainment Tonight backstage, and then we did something special for CNN. And
I remember one we did. We had Keith Urban. We did Keith Urban's interview, and in the middle of his interview, Taylor Swift came in with the duster, and we had a lamp set up in a little setting, and she came in the background, was dusting the lamps off, and he didn't know. He's just doing his interview, and she's like cleaning, turns around and goes, "Oh," and then left the frame. I was like, that was great.
That was cool. Yeah. So we had that, and we sent it out to all news media, and I mean, it got hundreds of millions of views, at the time, and so it raised over $1 million that night for people who had lost homes in Nashville. And
yeah, what a wild time. That was crazy.
And so, but it was one of those where it's like nobody got paid. We worked our asses off for like
hard, man. That was one of the hardest, most demanding gigs they'd done. That was because we were up all night. We left at like 3 a.m. that night or whenever those last pieces are, because they needed hits in the morning.
Oh, we were working overnight, like backstage. Oh yeah, editing. We set up stations backstage. You helped Wes set them up, and it was like but it all got out and it worked, and the news media had it on everywhere, and so those are the most satisfying, I think, projects, when you can do something that you actually see the good that it has done and impacted people's lives in some way. Yeah. That's what makes this business. There's a lot of craziness in this business, but when you can actually make a difference with something.
Yeah, meaningful. It's making it meaningful.
That's when it's like entertainment dudes. Like you're making meaningful content that people absorb. And
that same year, that same year, I was out of the news business by that time, but I was still heavily involved in the Mid-South Emmys and so forth. And that year, I remember I gathered all of the stories from all of the TV stations in Nashville and put together a sizzle reel of all the rescues and the heartwarming stories and all of that.
I think we used his footage.
Actually,
because you collected you got a reel that had a collection of all the edits from all the networks together, and that's the footage we used in Nashville Rising. We said, who cut this? Like someone at a news station, they put everything together.
No, I edited a sizzle reel for the Mid-South.
It was like a 5-minute sizzle reel with everything, right?
Exactly. So
that's
maybe
what we used. We used that video.
Wow. So maybe it's your doing
that got us the Emmy. So there you go.
Okay.
We should all share it.
You did an Emmys, a video for the Emmys that was in a video that got an Emmy. That got.
I know. And I didn't even submit it. It was submitted by like High Five or some company that was helping produce the live concert.
Okay.
So
they submitted it, and it was all our stuff. So anyway,
Geneva with Nashville called and asked me if I'd put it together, and I was like, sure. Yeah.
Well,
great.
Thank you, Cam. I had no idea.
Wow.
That's hilarious.
Small world.
Because I was like, this is actually really good footage because it had the aerials, the drones, it had all the stuff on the ground. And I'm like, there's no way to have gotten all of these pieces in such a short period of time because the news just happened. And they're like, we had this guy that cut a reel together and it was all of them together.
There and I wasn't even in news anymore at that time. So
it's a small world after all.
We got I remember we got footage, individually from some stations, but then I remember that one big reel.
I was thankful for. I remember because we were pulling pieces from it, and it was all there. Because we had about 3 different reels. We had 3 that were just one station, and then one that was a collection of all of them together, and that was the one that somebody sent us. Oh, you got to use this one; it's amazing. So that was really funny.
And that was one too. I just wandered around like the neighborhoods. I have helped clean up, some houses that friends that had lost everything, in the downstairs or whatever, and we were taking all their stuff out, and it was heartbreaking. And I just took it was like a DSLR camera, and I just walked around shooting footage of it, and then I interviewed a few people who were just in tears, losing everything. And so we had all these elements, that all sort of came together for that thing. And that was a really, it was very impactful,
Yeah.
And
hard to forget.
Like that's what I'd like to do with career stuff moving forward. It's like I want to do stuff that impacts people.
I think that's something that you can realize whenever you're working with people. And I think no matter what it is, whether you're doing an interview, whether you're working with corporate or talent, everyone wants to do something that matters. They want to feel like what they're doing matters and what they're doing is important and somehow impactful in their life and gives their life meaning. So anytime I'm ever working with a client or a customer, an actor, no matter who they are, I understand that basic concept, there's the desire for their life to matter. And I think if you take that approach, because we feel the same way, and no matter what you do, if you bring that into anything that you do and anyone that you work with, you're going to show that you care about them. It's like that most empathetic connection that you can get,
Yeah.
And it's just special when you finally get to see when your world comes together, when we know that people need their lives to matter. And then we get an opportunity to show how their lives are mattering and then share that with other people. And then they're impacted by their story. It's like the perfection. It's perfection. Well, man, it's been so exciting. We're coming up on the hour. It's been so excited having you on the show. So appreciate you being with us.
Is there anything we've missed that we haven't covered?
Now that you have a platform, is there anything you want to share?
I want to share with everybody.
Well, I'm doing projects. You can go to travistelevision.com. And so I've got a reel of, things I've worked on over the past, and things that I'm doing now, which is, a lot of corporate stuff right now, for companies here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and developing some newer stuff. So, it's great. I love what you're doing, Jason, with at Custom Quicks.
Thank you.
That's cool. And,
it's been great. It's just been the building. It's the same thing in 2020. I think it's the victim mentality versus like the overcomer mentality. I just because Ray got stuck in Ukraine. My wife's from Ukraine. She got stuck there, and she was there for 8.5 months. Like I didn't see her for 8 months, and I was sitting, locked up. I just said, this is crazy. So I started a company during that time. Horrible time probably to start a company, but at the same time, I'm like, you know what? I want to do something positive, and so it gave me a focus. I got to design everything, build the network. networks, build the people. I think we've got about video teams in about 25 states now that are ready to go. So it's just kind of making that network that really helps complement different video production companies or whoever. And if you need, like, you're missing an element in Florida, okay, we have a team there that can shoot an interview or whatever to contribute to what you're working on. Or you said with corporate, it's that understanding the story about what makes what they do important, what is the value in it, and then connecting that value through a story to their audience. It's just, that's what a successful, corporate, or no matter what story, that's what a successful story is. So so I appreciate it. It's
mentioned San Francisco list.
Okay. Absolutely. Well, absolutely. And I think
I wanted to say too, I hope your wife's family is okay in Ukraine.
Thank you.
And God, that's such a horrific thing that's happening. It's just surreal to think that could happen in today's. Yeah, it's like reliving history itself is happening. It's crazy that it's right there, because Kiev was such a huge battle point in World War II. A million people died in that area during those battles. It was so brutal. And then it was funny that it was Germany is now sending things to Ukraine to protect themselves against an invasion from Russia, and it was the opposite in World War II. It was Russia that was helping defend against the Germans. So it's fascinating. And a lot of the stuff that they don't see, like that whole area where those villages were burned, she has a dacha, her family does, outside there, and we know those streets, we know those buildings, and they're gone. And it's just, there was people in her house, like it tripped all the security stuff. There's mines everywhere, and we don't know when we'll be able to get back to that area. But we got her mom out of Kiev, and now some of her other family is in Kiev as well. And Ray is spending time working with a lot of just different individuals there, the zoos, organizations, to help get relief over there, and to help people that are still stuck and or staying or can't get out. So it's crazy that in our lifetime, but I think we're all trying to figure out some way to help, It's like amazing. Yeah. Sorry you're having to go through that. But well, thank you. Appreciate you as always. And I look forward to catching up again. We can talk obviously after the show and catch up. I'd love to hear what those things are going on. But for everyone, thank you for joining us on another episode of Entertainment Dudes. Greg Travis, thanks for joining the show. And Kim Cornelius, thanks for being on the show too. It's been a pleasure having you.
Jason, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I love being on my own show. It's great.
Too.
I'll invite you back, Cam. You can come again.
Likewise.
You guys are awesome.
Bye, everyone.
Entertainment Dudes.